Right. So from what y'all know about what is the what's the situation with the blue flu?
Really, people just police just protesting about cuts and pensions
Yeah.
stuff
And
like
other
that.
benefits, right?
And they just calling in sick. They really ain't sick.
How you
They
know?
really know.
How you know? How you know?
Just cause just police. You know.
I'm sure.
Police catching this.
No. Listen. Well, first of all, I don't think they are calling in saying they got the flu, but they calling in sick, right?
Right.
And
They
so,
just calling.
but you're saying it's just police. I'm sure there are other people that are calling in sick at their job the same day too, but we just ain't following or tracking who else is calling in sick to their job.
I think it's just the police and maybe the sheriff department because they're making them revert to 401k instead of their retirement fund being furnished by other people paying into it and tax money paying into it.
Yeah.
I mean, the way ours is set up, we have to put into our own retirement. You don't put into your retirement, you just have to work all your life.
Federal employees, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They were making them revert to a 401k, and their sickness and their blue flu didn't start until kind of around that time.
All of these people calling in sick.
Yes. They don't want to have to make that change in their retirement. And there's a lot of police that I've heard just by listening to other people. Because I know a couple of ladies that were married to police. They're angry. They're angry. Like,
Do they have a right to be angry?
not really, because they're blessed with a job.
Okay, so
It could be that they just take the pension all together, like they take stuff and do whatever they want to do with it when it gets to a point, but they got a job. And the fact that they got to start putting into their own retirement, they still got a job.
so okay, you're right. They're employed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the expectations people have of their employer when they get employed? Like what's some? I preached a sermon a while ago from one of the texts in Matthew that talks about the parable. What's written? The parable of the workers in the vineyard, where some show up early, some show up in the middle of the day, some show up late, and at the end of the day, all of them get paid the same thing, right? And I talked about, it's called the Fair Labor Standards Act. I think it started in Mount Pleasant, Michigan, early part of maybe 1940, 1950 or something like that. And the function of that was to ensure that when people were employed, they were employed fair and decent wages. So, there was a point in time where people were working and they didn't have to get insurance, they didn't have to get coverage, and they were working in some very inhumane conditions. With the Industrial Revolution, when people were working in all these factories, sweat factories and stuff like this, and things were happening to their bodies, some of them were dying, right? And there was no coverage for them. So what is our expectations of the employer when people get employed? I understand that one thing we can say in an economy that don't have many jobs, or supposedly don't have many jobs, and I think that's garbage.
That is because there's so many jobs here, it's just people don't want to start over when they lose their job.
You think that's the case too?
Because the reason why I said some of them, and some people are not qualified for them because they haven't really just developed their skills. But people, in the end too, there's some that they just not giving them to. Yes.
Look, have you seen? Has anybody ever seen a job fair that nobody showed up to? No. Matter of fact, I bet you if we put a thing in the paper, right? Let's just say we had tens of millions of dollars, and we put a thing in the paper saying, I don't even want to know what Sister Alexander said. As soon as I said we had tens of millions of dollars,
Can't you see me?
yeah, but look, I know she said something funny, so I kind of want to know, but I don't really want to know, but I just know it was funny. Right, so let's just say we had tens of millions of dollars and we put an ad in the paper saying, hiring, everybody is qualified, $15 an hour. Do you think we would have a hard time finding people? No, people be beating down the door. So I don't know where we get this myth that people don't want to work from. No, it's people don't want to work these garbage jobs for penny wages. Or think about who we talking about. We talking about civil servants. We talking about people when something's going down at your house that you can't control. These are the people you call, and as crazy as Negroes and non-Negroes are today, oftentimes any call, it could be a call about a cat in a tree that can turn violent. And what is it that we expect of the employer, especially when the employer actually is all of us?
Well, nowadays, when it comes to this, you cannot be two choices, first of all. Because if you start out with a decent paying job and then you lose it, it's hard to adjust to making a certain amount of money. That's part of a lot of people's problem. There's a lot of jobs here because, and how I know they've started flooding in early in the year, I accidentally came upon a lot of jobs and they were just coming through my computer constantly. I was looking up a job on our website, USA.gov, and I made one wrong key, and came upon jobs, floods of jobs on my computer. I couldn't stop them from coming. They still come.
Probably a link on it that you can click and say unsubscribe.
Yes, and they just flooded through it. And when I was at the previous church I came from, I just make copies and just give them a lot of them out.
Well, why don't you do that here? You know, you do that here too.
They're still coming. I'll do that.
Yeah.
But
so I think there are a couple things that work in the conversation up to this point, but it's primarily about everybody's expectations. What is that we are expecting? And I expect the people who sacrifice their life for my well-being to be treated very well. Right? And so, you know, part of this protest is because of laws and legislation that is being passed in City Hall by people who we elect, by the way, who is saying that the people who are civil servants, firefighters, and police officers, and other city employees are not as valuable as people who sit in offices down on Main Street. It's my mind, and I don't know all this stuff, you know, to the letter of the law. I'm learning about it. But I think every civil servant, every firefighter, every police officer need to have at least as good of an insurance and pension plan as a city council member.
because they're putting their life out there.
Yeah. So as we talk about just so that they got a job, think about the amount of money that they paying these people to begin with, which is so uncompetitive that a couple months ago, the police department in Atlanta came up to Memphis and recruited some of the Memphis police officers, and basically the only pitch was, we'll pay you more money down here.
Well, see, you got a lot of politicians here, a lot of people that's, like you say, really elect, that are not going to do right. They got to keep a certain portion of the money, the city funds, for them to do whatever they want to do, and they're not allocating that money where they're willing to go.
Yeah, well, what are we going to do? Anybody else, what y'all think about this up to this point? Because my next question is going to be a shift to our response to it. Does anybody, do y'all know of you know, I got former teammates, you know, that are police officers. You know, I got people who I know who are police officers. I got people who are aspiring to be. I know a firefighter or two too. Matter of fact, Terrence Shelton, right? Shelton, one of our members, Brother Sains, he's a sheriff. So when I'm thinking about their rights and their compensation package, I'm thinking about people who I know.
They're not looking at that. They're not looking at the fact that the city, all of this is just totally pissed go somebody else. We are people totally wrong with gangs, to robbing, to killing. That's when that movie they put out.
The Purge.
Yes, that's when it's gonna happen. Come to life. That movie came from somewhere.
Well, I tell you this, in certain parts of the country, already it feels like that. Do y'all know how many people? Yeah, do y'all know 80? I think 80-something people in Chicago were shot over the 4th of July weekend, and I think like 15 people died.
One lady constantly, she said every other day like she's there in a child. Every other week.
So I think we need to, first of all, be conscious of what's going on in situations and circumstances like this, because sometimes not knowing can be the difference between life and death. And if not life and death for us, definitely life and death for some other people. That's a good question. I wanted to pose that to y'all before I try to give my response. What can we do about that? What should we do about that?
Maybe more, more people, it might not have, but, more people can, when they have these protests, down in City Hall and stuff like that, if more people would become a part of that, it might make a difference.
I'll tell you something interesting, John.
Mm-hmm.
They put one together last Tuesday. I was down there last Tuesday. They had one this past Tuesday too, but I didn't go. They had one yesterday. I didn't go.
Two pastors were down.
Guess who the two pastors were?
You and somebody.
Yeah. Who said that? Somebody told you?
Told us.
Oh, I told you that. I was about to say, wow, this something. Yeah.
But
Other pastor was Pastor Kenneth Whalum Jr.
But I'm just saying
that I seen. So,
and I'm not just talking about black.
Well, I am.
Or people, period. Would get involved in something like that. Maybe something happen, and then, like I say, put together some kind of march, or, stuff like that. Sometimes make differences. I don't know.
Sister Alexander, what do you think? You the elder in the room. You've seen a lot of stuff change and develop over the years in the city. What do you think?
I don't know. I could bring it home because our country, our city.
You talking about you talking about in general, or are you specific? Are you
talking about
the elected officials? Yeah.
And I find it hard to believe that you were sick like this. So comfortable in your seat, and if somebody has worked and put their money into something, and all of a sudden you say, "Hey, you can get this. This is the end of it. If you want it, you can pay some more." I just think it's unfair. I would hate for the Tennessee Consolidated Retired Teachers Association to write me a letter.
And just say, hey.
It's been money to it, and this is it.
Yeah, it's fun while it lasted, right? Yeah. Thank you for your service.
Really?
Well, and then
I don't know. It's all about money. It's about money. We changed from blue quality to shield to sickness. I've had problems ever since I've been in sickness. I don't like sickness, and a lot of other people don't. And it was said in people in MEA and that kind of thing that chronic Cash's wife had cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Sickness was not accepted. I mean, Blue Cross Blue Shield, she had problems, and they, that's why it's about money. Same way giving up the charter. It's about money. It ain't about people, it's about money. It's about what can I do for myself? What can I get?
Because they're looking at how the government has put everything, every organization, everything that help people on grassroots. They slice it, their budgets, and so they're slicing it. Public officials, money. I mean, civil service.
Yeah, I'm about to say, and that's the other thing. I hadn't seen them cutting salaries for city council members.
Oh, no. No, not that people. Just the people, just the people that serve. Look how they did it in the school system. The janitorial service, they chopped that to death with the janitorial. I know it.
And here's what I think. I think we have to do all we can to inform our people. Again, consciousness, knowledge is power. I know it sounds cliche, but it's true. I have conversations sometimes with some young adult brothers, and we talk about stuff like this. You'd be surprised. I think a lot of us just don't even know and understand how the world we live in works, how things are connected, and methods to get stuff done. So by the time certain things come to our front door, it's already such a tidal wave behind it that we feel so helpless that we don't think we do anything but take it. I would like for us to not only start to inform people or continue to inform people about what this is and what's going on. But also, at some point, we got to try to change our value system. I would want us to, I would rather see police officers and firefighters making more money than the city council members, than the city council members making more money than the police officers and the firefighters. You see what I'm saying? Because these Negroes and non-Negroes are sitting in boardrooms talking.
Doing nothing.
No, it's not that they ain't doing nothing. You know, they
I mean,
you know,
physical.
right. But then, and it's so manipulative that now people understand the amount of influence in those seats. So they will even lie about where they live to keep them. So, you know, a lot of this, and what I think falls into our lap over and over again is us, and by us now I'm talking about the church especially, our ignorance that allows us to constantly be manipulated by officials who just show up around election time or just reach out during campaign season, and or us not being involved in the political process at all, which is always a default vote for the people who win. Always. And if the people who I said this to a person who was speaking to me on behalf of somebody running for office now, and they were talking about the incumbent, saying that the incumbent has been insufficient or not performing the job well for the last several decades. To which I said, well, why have y'all allowed the person to be in office for that long?
Because you got a lot of people out of touch with the political process. They done set back and they saw so much of nothing being done when it shouldn't have been. Took it just back on. A lot of people don't even vote.
Right. And so, again, this is what, I don't know if y'all are familiar with this. I wrote something it actually was published first in the Tri-State Defender. They republished it in the Commercial Appeal a couple weeks ago. And this is what I was saying. I was saying, I know that there are pastors that are out there endorsing candidates. I'm not persuaded to be one of them. But what I am persuaded to do is empower the voter base so that they would know what's going on with who and this sort of stuff, and being involved in that from that standpoint, and allowing, you know, raising the voter turnout.
That's what it was. That's all it was. I mean, each church, every church, there's so many churches in the city, they could do that. Every church could do that. And there's nothing but start a petition in the church and report it every time it comes, or election time comes up, whatever office. I think every church in the city needs to do that.
You think every church should start a petition for what?
To people to vote. I mean, if something.
Oh, like a voter's registration drive of sorts.
Yeah. I mean, if they're going to promote the political people, because where I came from, every time it was time to vote for a political official, they'd be lined up on the first front two rows.
You know, like she had said earlier, it's a lot of people, you know, we may not really know them or anything, but they have just given up on government. You know, they just, you know, I ain't think about that. You know, folks don't do what they want to do nowadays. We hear that a lot. And that's really has a real impact on the people that get to stay in office like that.
And they're
You
trying
know?
to stay, so I'm
Yeah.
going to re-elect.
Right,
That's what
those
I'm
people
electing.
just, you know.
And go get it.
Well, we need to
So
do
the
something.
same people vote, same people put the same people back in, and it's ongoing.
So maybe this is more, you know, this is another thing about our gospel challenge. It got to be more than just posting a video on social media. So if the gospel is calling us to be involved, because Jesus was involved, and when Jesus is crucified, that is a federal execution. So when Jesus is crucified on a hill called Calvary that we shout about on Sundays, it's the Roman federal government that executes this young black man. And they execute him for the way he was disrupting the governmental order of that day. So I say that to say Jesus is obviously involved in the political process. So maybe our gospel challenge is to be so involved in the political process that we disrupt the order too. And maybe the reason so many of us in the church don't want to disrupt the order is because it may land us on a hill called Calvary.
I'm with the in-crowd. If you're not with the in-crowd, it ain't gonna matter what it's gonna matter to their prestige.
Well, let's do this. Let's Sunday during worship service, let somebody lift up something so we can make sure everybody in our congregation that is of voting age is registered to vote. And if they're not, we need to get them registered like yesterday. Then we need to do something too that extends our effort outside of our church. Everybody in our area, everybody in 3116 area code. We need to do something. I'm even thinking about trying to put a town hall meeting together with some of the elected officials. Y'all niggas want our votes, then y'all need to come talk to us. And that's something I'm thinking about very, very serious. And maybe within the next, because the election is coming up like yesterday too. And there's so much more that I want to just talk about with that. But let's get to some of this biblical stuff. Let's lift up a word of prayer. God, thank you for a space to come and think, to dwell in conversation, to be disrupted but not be disrespected, to be inspired and informed, and prayerfully be inclined to do all we can to let thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. We trust that you are already in the midst of this space and this moment and this time, and we ask that you would be with us for the duration of our conversation, and every question and answer, and every thought and every response, so that we can give you glory and also be blessed. This is your servant's prayer in Jesus' name. And all of God's people said amen.
Amen.
Amen. So, I wanted to try to lift something up today that stems from a conversation I had this morning. For the past couple of days, I have been in a conference teaching a class on God, love, and hip hop. Look up, G, you need to plug some up. Come on. Or, and so I'm in a class on God, love, and hip hop with some young adults, right? Some late teenagers and people going into college and stuff like that. And one of the things we have been talking about again was how we look at and analyze stuff that goes on in the community, kind of sort of like what we were just doing, how we're looking at stuff going on with the civil servants and the police officers and the firefighters, and then how we seem to be a lot less analytical with stuff that goes on in our own churches. So this morning we were talking about the way the hip-hop community and the community at large really is very male-dominated. And women oftentimes become objects or people who are devalued and not treated right. And so we started talking about how some of the stuff goes on in the church too. And some of the things that were coming up as we were looking at a particular text was kind of sort of disturbing me a little bit, because I was hearing these young people articulate and express these stereotypes and these concepts and ideas that are so regressive. They are so they don't build up humanity. They don't, in my opinion, highlight God's will for humanity. Stuff about race, stuff about gender, stuff about class, stuff about sex and sexuality. When I was here, I was like, wow, really? And so we wrestled through some scriptures, and I could see that their mind was open enough to at least, starting, and they were like, wow, so one of the things that really struck me was there's a young brother in the class who just accepted his call to ministry a couple of weeks ago, church down in Mississippi past Jackson. And he was awed, A-W-E-D, to learn that Jesus was a black guy, right? Or that Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, that these are people of color, right? They all, and some of the other students too are all, but, I was really intrigued by this preacher's response. So we start looking at this particular text that we are about to look at in a second, because when I start talking about race, I start thinking about the Bible study that we've been having, Son of God, Black Jesus, White Lives, Race of the Black Church. And I'm like, here go the Black Church right here, and it is coming back up again. So not only is it the adults that have these strains and struggles, right, which sometimes you can understand because some of our adults grew up in a segregationist type of environment, and sometimes the residue of that society still lays on the mentalities of some of us, right? But then you got young people who are growing up in this mythical, it's a lie, post-racial society, right? But even if it's not post-racial, it is less publicly racist, and it is definitely more desegregated, even if it ain't integrated. One thing that he said that struck me was, light skin is beautiful. Black skin is okay. It might be beautiful sometimes. This is a young, emerging minister who is articulating stuff about skin and skin tone that he is deriving from a particular scripture, because I was disrupting the way it had been assumed, and Jesus was a focal point. I was talking about misogyny, where we as men devalue and objectify women so much and so bad that even now women devalue and objectify women. Anybody heard Nicki Minaj? Right? Not taking away from the sister's creativity or artistic freedom. She can talk about what she want to talk about. G, don't say nothing yet. Right? But nevertheless, in light of all of that, now you have women and sisters who sometimes are devaluing and objecting. So projecting misogynistic themes, ideas, sensibilities, right? And so I'm trying to come to defense for how even the church has participated in this misogyny, right? Where we lift up men and devalue women, right? Men can preach, women can only cook or clean, right? I know that ain't like this at Abyssinian, but in the general church, there's a lot of that sentiment that still remains. And so in the midst of this, I was disrupting this. I said, well, maybe we need to have this conversation again at Abyssinian, because really all I was trying to do was lift up for them a human perspective on Jesus. So the same thing that we've been talking about for the past several weeks, where I'm trying to humanize, not only is Jesus Son of God, this greatly divine, and one of the sisters in there said, I understand Jesus is 100% divine and 100% human, but I still have a hard time understanding how he would do this, right? This particular. I was like, well, what would you do? Well, I would do it. I said, well, wait a minute. You human, right? Yeah. Did you say that Jesus was 100% human? Yeah. Right? So there is, there's still a lot of work to be done to help reclaim the humanity of Jesus in a way that could help us identify with who Jesus is and hopefully compel us to try to live like Jesus lived. Last week I lifted up a real interesting text in Matthew. Don't turn there, turn to John chapter 4. But last week I lifted up this text in Matthew where Jesus talks about. No, I didn't lift up the text in Matthew last week. I lifted up a text in John last week. No, I did lift up the text in Matthew last week, right? This was John. John chapter 1, 43 through 51, where calls Philip and Nathaniel was saying, you know, can any good thing come out of Nazareth? Right, so we talked about that last week. And in this text alone, references to Jesus are somebody about whom Moses in the law and the prophets wrote. That's one way Jesus is described. He's also described as Jesus, the son of Joseph from Nazareth. He's also described as a rabbi, son of God, and king of Israel. And then he identifies himself as son of man. So what I've been trying to describe is the son of man as the humanity and the son of God as the divinity. Along with these associations come understandings of race, and I'm going to try to prove it to you now. Sure. I think they were intrigued by it. I mean, there were a lot of things that I was trying to introduce that I think they were intrigued by, because I think that they were still young and open-minded enough to not feel like their salvation was at stake if they considered a particular interpretation of a particular text or a particular theme that the church had been promoting for a long time that didn't align itself with their experience, right? So they were open-minded, and I gave them just like I give all of us. You know, they didn't have to agree with me. They could have rejected the stuff, and it would have been no big deal. But what we looked at was John chapter 4. Now, I want to suggest that in John chapter 4, we have a traditional white reading of this text that tilts towards Jesus as Son of God. But there's also, for me, a more interesting, compelling, intriguing, and identifiable Son of Man or black reading of the text too. There are parts of this text that we have been conditioned to read as, or through a white gaze, through a white lens, where we focus on the stuff that affirms Jesus as the Son of God, when there are also things in this text that focus on Jesus more so as the Son of Man. Now remember, I'm just suggesting that the Son of Man is the one that lifts up Jesus' humanity and one by which we should be able to more readily identify with. But most of us, again, tilt towards the white reading, the Son of God reading. Somebody start in verse 3, and I want y'all to read from verse 3. Whoever reads from verse 3 to verse 7. Yes, ma'am. Chapter 4, John chapter 4, verse 3 through 7.
The Lord learned of this because Judah went back on the way Galilee. Now he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well and was about to 6th hour. The Samaritan woman came to our water. Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples were crossed the town by the river.
Okay, so what just happened? Jesus went to Sychar. Where's Sychar? In Samaria, right? And then what happened? He sees a lady at the well. Okay. Anything else anybody see that's interesting up to this point? Now do me a favor, y'all, because I know how we are, right? Y'all like, Pastor Earl up to something. So let me read ahead and see what's about to happen, right? So try not to do that. I understand it's tempting, but try not to do that. I'm saying up through the first 7. I think G read through the 8th verse. Did you say the part? No, that's okay, right? So through the 8th verse, tell me what really sticks out for you. What do you think this text is saying about Jesus so far? He gets thirsty. Okay. Okay, so next, verse 9 through 14.
The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans." Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his flocks and herds? Jesus answered, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give him will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life.
Read 15.
The woman said to him, Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water.
Somebody read 16. Okay. So now what just happened? Saving souls sound like. Anything else? Go ahead, G.
Almost as if it goes back to the idea that there's an art structure of man and female.
Okay.
How this is written, that Jesus said, go call your husband.
Go.
If you read it really, a close reading, it sounds like go to your husband's side and get some of the water because Christian jobs to save souls. But yet, just read it from a non-Christian perspective or a non-theological perspective, it's almost like, before I do anything, before I talk to this man's wife, bring your husband.
Okay. All right.
Also, even before that part, it seems that he's breaking some barrier in the sense that, why are you talking to me?
Yeah, now that's
No,
it.
we don't have nothing to do with we ain't like this.
Hold on. Who you talking to?
Yeah,
Right?
it's like a distinction between the two of them, even on a human level.
Okay, right. There's definitely some human. Right.
I don't want to sit beside this woman when I come to church. That's why I sit in the back. I don't want.
I wouldn't want to sit by Sister Alexander.
I don't like her. I don't like her.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Right? Go get your husband.
Yeah.
Right. Let me tell y'all something that the young people lifted up today about this part. No, let me wait. Something else. What did y'all pick up?
It seems that even the spot has some significance.
Yeah, Jacob's well was there,
yeah,
right? So Matthew, as narrator, makes mention Jacob's well was there, right?
Yeah.
And the Samaritan woman. What's her name, by the way?
You don't have it.
Do you know a woman on earth that don't have a name?
Well, we didn't.
Okay, there you go. There you go, right? So we don't even know her name, right? So her name to the narrator really wasn't even important. What was important was where she was from.
That's why they say Samaritan.
Yeah. And so she says something about where they are too. Wait a minute. You better than Jacob? You know, Jacob is our father. You greater than him? Jacob, the one gave us this well. Here's the part that our young people focused on right off. This ain't the comment I was about to make about what they said a second ago. This is what they said right off. I asked them to read through it and tell me what struck out to them. Verse 17, the woman says, I have no husband. Jesus says, you're right when you say you have no husband. Fact is, you've had 5 husbands, and the man you have now is not your husband. What you have just said is quite true. That's what they lifted up. She had 5 husbands. Out of all of this stuff in the text, the thing that they pinpointed on was she had 5 husbands, which meant for them that she was a loose hoochie mama, right? To which I said, well, maybe you need to understand something about love and power and sex in the Bible, right? Right. And how would she get remarried, Catherine? You're absolutely right. This is something what I lifted up. How would she get remarried? Emmett, you got your hand up, or you?
Yeah.
Okay.
take care of.
Okay.
Last one. This lady here, say what's name?
Catherine.
Oh. Just like that way to say, damn fine. Area of the story don't give you a description.
As to how she right.
More with action.
Uh-huh.
Doesn't go out, get killed.
Right.
Doesn't go out hunting, get killed.
Right.
So that's not so much to say that she deserves.
Right.
But in body, so it means lots to hope.
Right, and I think that that's a good thing, right? Because that gives us some space to get involved in it and try to make some sense of it in a way that we can relate to. Come on, Ms. Helen.
Even with that, the customs back then was that when the man died, then another male member of the family usually steps in, pick up, and you know, it just goes on.
So here's what I explained to the young people that they did not necessarily know, right? That the assumption that females in this culture have a particular type of agency, as we were talking about misogyny and devaluing of women and objectifying women and treating them like they're less than human. So women don't go out and get them a husband. That's not how that happens. Somebody gives them away. They are covered by some male leader of a family that gives them away, usually auctions them off, you know, and sometimes to the highest bidder, right? I got you, John. Let me try to explain this part right here. So what I explained was the story of Jacob, Rachel, and Leah, where Jacob ends up marrying Rachel, but only after he's worked for 7 years and supposedly gotten tricked into marrying Leah. And do know that marrying in those days usually had some type of relationship to sex of some sort, right? So he has sex with Leah by surprise. Go figure. I don't know. I don't want to talk too much about this right about now because Scylla and some others, but you know, I don't know nobody who got surprised by who they. Never mind. Right. And so not only that, he ends up marrying 2 sisters. This is Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, right? He ends up marrying 2 sisters. Was it legal? Yeah, it was legal. You can have as much property as you want to, as long as you can afford it. Yeah, her daddy gave them away. Yeah, her daddy did that. Her daddy said to Jacob, when Jacob said, "Man, you tricked me into sleeping with your oldest daughter," the daddy said, "Well, you know the rules. I gotta marry my oldest daughter off before I marry off my youngest daughter. But you can have her too, since you think she's so fine. You just gotta work 7 more years." Right? So that's it. That's at work, right? These 2 people, they getting married. They ain't had nothing to say about it. But it's ironic when we got to this text, we assume that this sister, or the young people at that time, assume that this sister was the loose sister. And I've heard several preachers preach this, like, you know, it's all about this woman being so loose, right? She's at the well by herself because she's been sleeping with other people's husbands. That ain't nowhere in the text. And what is not mentioned that Emmett alluded to a little bit is what is called levirate marriage. Levirate. I think I spelled that right. They pay me to teach, not to spell. Levirate marriage is what Emmett is referring to, and I think maybe Sister Helen referred to too. If there are 7 brothers in a family, oldest to youngest, and the oldest brother is married to this woman, the oldest brother dies and they don't have a male child. They can have 18 female childs, but if they don't have a male child, then that woman with those 18 kids automatically becomes the wife of the next oldest brother and is required to have a baby, a male baby by him. Now, what if she don't feel like it? Yeah, right? And so let's just say, and this happened once in the Old Testament too. Let's just say the first husband dies. Then she goes to the next oldest brother and he dies. And she goes to the next oldest brother and he dies. And let's just say she's having 2 girls by each one. So it's quite possible she could get to the 5th husband having really no say in who she's been married to. But we don't consider this because that ain't the way we taught to read this. We taught to read this through a white gaze. See, in white society, the wife, most of the time, was nothing but a trophy piece. Something to be seen, not her. It wasn't about her value and her personhood. It was about her being property to that man. Clean my house, raise and nurture my kid. See, but look, I want to tell y'all now, that's a very Eurocentric perspective. The African perspective, women had a lot to do with what went on in the community. They were not just the man's trophy pieces. So notice how we are conditioned to read this. I'm coming to something else too, because G was on it at first. Most of us, when we read this, we thinking about salvation. This conversation about salvation, right? How does a conversation about salvation end up talking about husbands and how many people you sleeping with? So let's rewind a little bit. John, you had something. Let me take that first.
I was just wondering, in the text it don't mention it, but I was just wondering how she knew he was a Jew.
Great question.
You know.
Great question.
She just seeing, you know. I mean, I'm pretty sure they don't look that much.
So here's what one of the young kids said earlier today. They said, "Dog, nah, just slip her by." How did she know he was a Jew? I asked them, what y'all think these people look like? Of course, somebody said white. I'm like, what? Jesus? I said, you know what? They took Jesus to heaven. You know, same stuff we've been through. He took Jesus. Oh, right. So they shot. I said, so here you got this black man who, by the way, just broke, to Helen's point earlier, just broke a major social custom. Samaritans were considered to be half-breeds. So even though the shortest distance between Galilee and Judea is a straight line through Samaria, Jews in Jesus' day didn't take that straight line. They walked all the way around Samaria just to get in between Galilee and Judea, because the bougie people don't like going where them ratchet folks are. So they would walk all the way around, right? But the text says Jesus needs to go through Samaria. I like the King James here. I don't like the King James a lot, but his must needs go through Samaria. You can see the compulsion in this. Like, he ain't have a choice. Like, no, I have to go through Samaria. And then he gets there, and now you got this black man that John lifts up his humanity. Verse 6 says Jesus was tired from the journey. That don't sound like Son of God. That sounds like a human who's been walking in the hot desert region. And now he's sitting down. Can you imagine this black brother in his early 30s, hair down, probably locked up, sweat coming down his face, exhaustion coming out of his lungs, sitting there by a well, and a sister walks up. What y'all think gonna happen? Conversation. That's what they say in my neighborhood. Conversation rules the nation. Conversation ensues. Jesus says to her, "Would you give me something to drink?" Now, what's interesting about that? Gender role? Now, that's the question, I think. He was there before she was. She walking up to him. He been right there at the well. Why didn't he get something to drink himself? So is Jesus participating in the?
He was a man.
Now I want y'all to hear. Both of these comments were excellent. So since Jennifer says he was thinking about living water.
Because he was already at the well, and like he said, he could have got his own water.
Okay, so for you, Jesus was thinking about living. And what is the living water that Jesus is?
The word, the gospel.
The word, the gospel. So, something to do with salvation again, right? Okay. But John, you said, but he a man.
Right, and it was the way it was.
Okay.
And I feel like, I mean, not saying that he was taking advantage, but he was just doing what the men did back then. And when he seen her, say, "Would you give me a drink of water?" Because that was the
because that's just how it is. Well, now that's quite possible. There are other instances though where Jesus is seriously disrupting this notion of how men treat women. And here's a prime example that makes me think that this is one of them too. Because this woman says to him, "Nigga, you ain't supposed to be talking to me." Right? So the mere fact, wait a minute. So the mere fact, now we get into what I think is a black read of this text now. See, the white read is for us to always look at Jesus and be thinking about salvation. Everything come out of his mouth about salvation. So it's hard for us to identify with living a life like Jesus, because as far as we know, he always functions on almighty autopilot, and everything that comes out of his mouth is all about salvation. Well, wait a minute now. There's a whole lot of stuff going on in this text. Whole lot of stuff going on. Give me just a say, Emmett. So, what is sad is she reinforces social stereotypes on herself that don't serve her well. She don't even think enough of herself that he should be talking to her. But notice now, John, he is saying something to her, and she says, "What you doing talking to me for? You know, how you gonna ask me for a drink?" Now, it is interesting to know how she recognized he was a Jew. Maybe he had a particular type of slang vernacular. Maybe he had an accent, if you will. I remember when I first got to Memphis, and I still get it now. I'm talking to people, and they assume, since I've been in Memphis for so long, I'm from Memphis. And then they say, "Well, you don't sound like you from," whatever this means. "You don't sound like you from Memphis." So when I'm opening up my mouth, they assume I'm from somewhere up. You must be from up north somewhere.
Because we're so South.
Right, okay. And that could be the case. So let's just say, in these regions, the people speak with a particular type of drawl, and she picks up on, and like, "Oh, no, I can tell you must be a Jew. You said Maine instead of man. You must be, you ain't from around here." And then Jesus says in response to her, "If you knew the gift of God," this is where we really draw this salvation thing from. "If you knew the gift of God and who it was that asked you for a drink, you would have asked him," not you would have asked me, "you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." I'm going to come back to that in a second. Emmett, you had something.
Yeah, go back to your first point about conversation.
Yeah.
Custom of the land, stranger, people in town. First person you see, man, the conversation might be the first person you encounter is one. Gonna react. The man gonna take over. The man is gonna take over, and the conversation gonna be different. The living water, he made reference that he made blood water, he may hit on, but he also got a sense enough to know she's not in there by herself. So at some point, you're going to have to have some respect. She could have a house full of me, brothers, and all of them come out one month. So just knowing your way around, figuring how to get things done. A lot of this could be nice conversation. So I can really see that. Your conversation is going to get you through some tough times, some hard things, and some real shaky places.
Anybody else? So he says to her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that's asking you for this drink, you would have asked him, he would have gave you living water." And she says, "You ain't got nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water?" Does anybody in here understand what the living? Well, no, I mean clearly she's like, basically what you're talking about. But she keep referring to this water at this well, right? Now let me try to take us. I know some of this is subconscious. Well, I believe some of this is subconscious and maybe unintentional. But let me try to take some of the focus off of this salvation stuff for a minute and just, as Emma was saying, let's just consider this to be a very common conversation. So I don't know if Jesus feels threatened or in danger. He very well could, because he understands that Jews don't customarily go through Samaria. But at the same time, when you go to a new town, you usually don't go to a place like Jacob's Well. You go to the you go to Main Street, and yeah, you go to the town square, and from the town square, that's where you would introduce yourself to somebody, and hopefully they would be able to accept you as the foreigner, as the stranger, which was supposed to be part of their custom too. But I want to add some tone. Let me add some tone to this conversation to pick up on themes highlighted by Catherine and Emmett already. And again, think about this. Black man sitting at a well in his mid-30s. We don't know how long he was sitting there. But then his sister shows up, and all of a sudden he started talking to her. Would you give me something to drink? Excuse me, do I know you? You must not be from around here. What you doing talking to me? You look like a Jew. And don't you know you ain't supposed to be asking me for a drink? Baby, let me tell you something. If you knew who I was and what I was asking you for, then you would have asked me for something. I'm asking you for some water. I could have gave you some living water. Hold on. Excuse me, sir. What you talking about? I'm looking at you, and you a scrawny little 30-year-old. Don't even look like you got nothing to draw with. Y'all missed that. Right? Sir? You don't have nothing to draw with. Watch this. And this well is deep, baby. No, ain't that what the text says? Huh? No, I'm interpreting it as if it is a flirtatious conversation, which it very well could be. And I'm going to show you, right, and the tension in this, this is what I'm about to say. The tension in this is the white Son of God rendition about salvation versus a more humanistic Son of Man black interpretation. Black folk know about flirting. Ain't these two black people in the text? What would you... Don't answer this out loud. What would you do? You 30. Let's just say both of these folks fine. Now, obviously Jesus wasn't hard to look at, because crowds always follow them, and very rarely do crowds follow people who ain't attractive unless they singers or something, or athletes. I ain't never heard nothing that says Jesus sang, except for when he quoted one of the songs. But and sure enough, don't. So let's just say these two attractive people. Now talking about that. Now imagine this. I mean, it's just regular common. Man, this well's deep. Where you gonna get your living water from? You greater than Jacob? You must. You know my people from around here. Who you think you are? He says, well, everybody who drinks that kind of water is going to be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them, you ain't never going to want no more water. You never go back. Huh? Well, but both of them black, though. And I assume if she got 500, we'll get to that in a second. Right? Hold on. I'm pressing this somewhere because I'm looking at the time, but I want to try to get somewhere before we leave. He says the water I give them will become, listen to this language, will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life. What kind of water creates life? Huh? No, say no, come on. Birth, right? How does birth happen? And you do know that there is a substance that is produced by the male that has water in it, that if it lands in a certain place in a female, has the potential to create life. And if life is a continual cycle of procreation and recreation, it can happen eternally. Listen to what he is saying now. But what we want it to be about is salvation. Because for us, Jesus is Son of God. He didn't call himself Son of God here. Now, I'll tell you something that's real interesting. As if I ain't already told you something interesting, right? And keep your eyes open, right? Because it seems like your eyes open now. If this was just about salvation, this is where it really gets interesting. She said, whew, boy, it's getting hot in here. Give me this water. I don't never want to be thirsty no more and keep constantly having to come here to draw water. And now, if this is about salvation, as G said right off, this is about salvation, what does her husband have to do with this? Why? So can I give y'all a 21st century rendition of what Jesus said? Where your man at?
Make sure it's okay.
Say it. Come on, say it. What'd you say?
He's trying to make sure it's okay.
Okay, so watch this, John. When we talk about Jesus and the way he interacts with sisters, this is what I was trying to get to in terms of this notion of misogyny. He ain't disrespecting her. Let me give y'all the lyric that I shared with them earlier. The song by Outkast. Y'all know that's one of my most favorite rap groups. And one of the artists in Outkast is Andre 3000 in a song called The Art of Storytelling Part 4, where he says, in essence, I ain't going to quote it for you line for line because some of y'all will get lost, but what he says is he's engaged in an encounter with this sister. And then she gets up, and one of them getting ready to go to the bedroom, but they're already in the bedroom. Yeah, I know that's the beginning, but by the time you get to the middle of the thing, right, exfoliating with their pom-poms and go through that, right. He is aroused, right? He's in a swole mood is what he calls it. So he's aroused until she tells him that she told this dude that she's with that she was just going to the store. He says, I didn't know she had a boyfriend, so the door I pointed her to. I said, call me when y'all break up. I don't mess with nobody chick. Right? So there is a ethic at work here with Jesus, I believe, that as he is engaged in this very human, common conversation of two people who may be attracted to each other, something in him says, I ain't trying to disrespect you, sister. You got a man? Where your husband? Go ahead. And then she says, I don't have one. He said, well, yeah, you know what? Sure don't. And everyone you ever thought you were with, they ain't your real husband. Now, that could be the critique of the whole however she ended up getting married thing and the culture and all of that other stuff. But above all of that, what interests me is how we can easily read this text as a text of Jesus' humanity, but we are compelled to always read Jesus as strictly always being focused on somebody's soul salvation. The word soul don't come up nowhere in here. And when Jesus wants to say something about saved, or when the Bible wants to say something about saved, it says it. When Peter starts to sink, when he was walking on water, what did Peter say to Jesus? Lord, save me. If the Bible wants to say save, it says save. It don't say save here. When the Bible wants to say soul, it says soul. It doesn't say soul here.
I don't think it was in salvation mode all the time.
Well, amen, somebody.
Not all the time. I mean, that human part and everything was in it.
Yeah, amen again.
I don't think he was in salvation mode all the time, but I do think he was in salvation
You think this is
In
about
the beginning,
him saving her soul?
I think in the beginning, from the
Hold on, go for it, Tarver.
Well, let's see. Like a few chapters over, he talks about.
Few chapters which way?
I want to say it's John 6.
Yeah. And, well, look. Let me say this with you then. Even up to this point, if you want to talk about some stuff in the text, by the time you get to 6, this is a different scenario, right? It's a different. Yeah.
He talks about it later on in this book. I mean, in this chapter.
In this chapter.
Go ahead, y'all want to get to
I
the.
think maybe we could get a different or interpretation as to what transpired from the beginning, but I think it leads up to around the 21st verse.
Got it.
In this chapter.
Right.
And it could very well be an introduction to. I'm gonna just put it this way. Maybe he did hit on it to get to know her from a different. Not that he didn't know, because he is Jesus.
Right. Which means
sometimes you have to get a person's attention.
I got that.
In more ways than one.
Right.
There's more than one way to get a person's attention.
And so we are again with the salvation motif, compelled to presume Jesus as Son of God has to have already known her and known everything about her, right?
Yeah.
But the text doesn't say that.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, all of the allusions to him being that divine don't come. This is the theme I've been trying to highlight for the past several weeks. The things that are coming up about Jesus' divinity, I'm not saying that he's not divine. I do believe he is. But they're coming from other people. They're not coming from him. This sister brings up, ooh, you are a prophet. And let's be clear, that don't necessarily mean that he is a fortune teller. Okay? We've been talking about prophecy. But the conversation shifts from the more overtly flirtatious stuff to a more direct conversation about salvation, because listen to this shift in this text. Sir, I can see that you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews... Wait a minute, what are we talking about? Where this come from? Unless she makes an appeal to her social standing as a way to try to justify where she is and what she's doing.
Maybe it's a thing where he is introducing himself to. Maybe she doesn't have a concept as to who Jesus is.
Clearly
Instead
not.
of him walking up to her and say, "Hey, my name's Jesus. Jesus, I'm the Son of God.
Yeah.
I can give you living water that you won't thirst anymore."
Yeah.
You can't just slap people upside the head when you first meet them. Sometimes you have to ease into it.
Right. I agree. I understand your approach to the conversation. What I'm trying to suggest is, what if Jesus wasn't about that?
Yeah.
Then, right? See, the attempt to justify the approach on something other than its own merit, that he was just having, has to be grounded in Jesus, Son of God, white Jesus, right? White Jesus, right? We listen. Here is how we are conditioned. We got to find something about Jesus and salvation, because we don't ever want Jesus to be too human. Watch this. If he's too human, then it indicts us for not living like he lived. It is an escape clause of sorts to constantly find the divinity in all of his actions and in all of his words, because it justifies the reason why we are negligent in respect to living the life he lived. See, when you start talking about him just having a conversation and flirt, then you start thinking about all the times you flirted with somebody and what a conversation did or did not go. Or maybe I start thinking about all of the times I neglected to ask the sister where her man was. Or maybe even in my own macho, insecure maleness, felt good about her having a man but still wanting to get with me. You see the indictment that takes place when I look at this as something that Jesus is having as a human conversation, and here I am, I'm supposed to be a follower of Jesus, living like Jesus lived, but I don't take the same detours he takes in the dialogue?
He was human, so they gotta make the Bible sound salvation mixed in. They don't want it to be totally.
Who is the they?
I mean, the people who wrote the prophets, John and all them, they're making sure that they're not pinpointing that side of it.
I disagree. John in verse
They're
number
trying to keep from pinpointing that side.
John in verse number 6 is giving us a very clear picture that Jesus is a human being here. But let me say,
I'm not saying he's not a human being, that
right.
He has that side to him, that connection, that kind of side when you flirt with the woman.
yeah,
I think what it really comes down to is making it possible. We weren't there
Right.
when this information was
yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
put down.
Yeah.
Okay, we were not there.
Uh-huh.
So I think it's making it possible for us to interpret and digest it now. Because we can see the human.
Right.
You know, we're human. We've never been divine and never will be.
Yes, you will. Yeah, and yes, you are.
Well,
in God, you live and move and have your being.
But
right. Okay.
we don't have the power that he had.
You sure?
Yeah.
And maybe that's what I've been trying to get us to think about.
Because I've always had people to say, well, it's impossible to live holy. But nevertheless, we should at least try.
Right. And then
You know,
yeah, I've heard that too.
Perfect.
Right, but who said holiness was perfection? See, so that's kind of the conversation that we would have about the concept of what it means to be holy. I think I'm trying to pull from something I read and engaged. So holiness can be compared to truth and justice, a commitment to truth and justice and living that out, more than it is a claim to a particular type of piety and abstinence. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So in that regard, yeah, so what I think is helpful is this. The way the text is presented, hear me y'all, the way the text is presented, it gives us choices on how we are going to interpret it. The text is written in such a way that we can interpret it in more than one way, and the challenge is, how do we disrupt the traditional interpretations when the traditional interpretations tilt us so far away from Jesus' humanity, we can't even identify with him no more.
Yeah.
You know, and I ain't saying that nobody said this. He can't be flirting. That's Jesus. Nobody said this tonight, but people say, he can't be flirting. That's Jesus. Right? I mean, this is a conversation with some of the kids. Wait a minute, huh? Well, wait a minute. Ain't you, sister said, he 100% human. Ain't you 100% human? Yeah. And you 18. Come on now. I'm looking at your clothes. You flirting just in your presentation. That's if you consider two adults being sexually attracted to each other, or erotically, let's just say erotically attracted to each other, as temptation or sinful, which I don't. If Jesus is right that she don't have no husband, that's what he says, right? If he's right, then this is two single adults engaged in an erotic conversation or flirtatious conversation. What's wrong with that? And what I was lifting up with these young people earlier, that they were, they were communicating to me the hypocritical double standard where they know some of the stuff that's going on in their churches with people who are promoting stuff that they ain't practicing. And my argument has been the reason we keep promoting it is because they told us that's what it was. And I was saying to them, show it to me. Show it to me. We don't see it. But what we do see are choices where we can identify with Jesus' human experience in a way to identify, and it can inform us on how we, I did this one time with a group of teenage boys, and they were with it. And then I got to that part where he asked about her husband, And I say, so now the next time you, and they wait a minute. Oh man, yeah. That man sure did do that.
That part makes her think that he realized that he did have a human side.
But not just a human side, he valued womanhood. Now there's other texts that I could point you to. Daughter of Abraham, healing of the babies, healing Peter's mother-in-law. You know, all these other, the way he treated Mary Magdalene, you know, his girlfriend let her head down and wiped his feet. I ain't going to tell y'all what the word feet can be translated into in the Greek. There you go. Holy Ghost. Yeah, use your Holy Ghost imagination. She anointed his feet. And all of the disciples were like, don't be doing him like that. And he said, y'all leave her alone. She's just trying to prepare me for where I'm going. Y'all right? I'm bringing this up, you know, as we listen, I'm really bringing this up again to connect us to the conversations we're having about how to read and experience Jesus in a way that we can relate to. Because I think that's where our transformation is. And I think the white dominant culture, let me back up a little bit. You can read salvation into this if this is what you need. If that's what you need, if that's what's going to help you, if that's what's going to bless you. Read it, okay? I'm not talking about demands, I'm talking about choices. That's what they didn't tell us. They did not tell us we had a choice on how to interpret it. It was you interpret it about salvation or you going to hell tomorrow. Some of them knew. Some of them knew, Sister Helen. Look, if anybody's apologetic for the church, it's me. But if anybody is critical of the church, it's me, right? Some of them knew.
Yeah, I mean, that's the purpose of them writing it this way.
Right. I mean, it is written for us to interpret.
That's why a lot of people don't understand it, because they were brought up traditionally where it's only one way. Salvation is only what he's based on.
Yeah.
But anybody that really get off into it like we're doing, like you're doing, see that side. I mean, because you point out the scriptures are there, the words that he's actually saying.
Yeah.
13 to 30 is no reference about what Jesus was like.
In the canonized form of the Bible that we got, right?
So, when you being told that it's all about salvation, it's all when you come with a different way to look at it, it opens you up for the conversation. And you can read into it, you still may not get it, but I think that you're doing a pretty good job of explaining it, and it gives us food for thought. We can go out, pose a question. Somebody will look at you like, where did you get this from? And you can say, well, come out and say, this is what we're talking about. This is what's being explained. But there's something else to this.
That you got, you have the Spirit of God in you that gives you the authority to make choices and decisions. You hear that, Sister Al? You hear that, Sister Alexander? Believe it or not, you even got the Spirit of God in you. I know it's hard for you to believe.
You said, Lord, don't dwell in the unclean. I heard that from somewhere.
Oh, wow. You got choices, baby. You got choices, right? So let's be diligent in paying attention to some of the stuff that comes up. I was encouraging the young people. I say this and I'm done. I was encouraging the young people, and we're gonna try to work tomorrow to see what they can implement in their churches, such that these type of conversations can take place, because they don't take place everywhere. But I was telling them, so now, after these couple of days when we've been wrestling with some of the stuff, you see some of the stuff and you see that it's there. Start asking questions. You might get kicked out of Sunday school, but just, still ask the questions.
I mean, mean, but that's going to draw them in and want to learn more instead of just the traditional basic of what they're getting.
Which leads me to exactly what Emmett said, and I thank him for bringing this to my attention. So our challenge is make sure we're here engaged in the conversation and bring somebody. Bring somebody. Shame on us if we don't invite nobody to Midweek. Shame on us if we don't invite nobody to worship service. If we know we getting help by this, if it is refreshing to us to hear about looking at our faith and our religion in this way, and we don't say nothing to nobody else about it, if we don't say exactly what Emma said, if we don't start talking to somebody, raise a question, and they lift their eyebrow, and you say, well, hey, you can sure enough come to have a sin, and we can talk about it. We talk about it all the time. I get a chance to ask my questions, give my perspective, and give my feedback. You know, the pastor gives his, and other people give theirs. It should be standing room only in these things. Because what people are out there saying is, church ain't talking about that stuff. Them folk, y'all ain't talking about that stuff. Yes, we are. And so tell them, come check it out. Come on, let's stand.